I've been designing and teaching philosophy courses at colleges and universities for over 15 years, and if I had to put together a new course on the essential works of political philosophy, here's the 5 texts that I'd choose. Number 4 is Discourse on Inequality by Jean-Jacques Rousseau from the 18th century, and it's often referred to as either the Discourse on Inequality or the Second Discourse, because Rousseau wrote an earlier discourse on the relationship between the arts and society. In Rousseau's earlier discourse, he focused on the relationship between art and nature, and in this book, he focuses on the relationship between politics and nature. Rousseau's central idea here is that human society represents an imposition upon an otherwise good nature, and that human society is inherently corrupting and painful for human beings. That the human entrance into society and a political order disrupts an otherwise peaceful, egalitarian, natural state, and while necessary, is nonetheless something that ought to be reformed and to be proceeded with very carefully. Rousseau's a critic of the political status quo in his time, in particular monarchies and absolutist states, whereby there's a great deal of inequality. Rousseau thinks that inequality is the fundamental political and social problem, similar to how Plato had thought that justice and injustice was. For Rousseau, modern political orders are fundamentally unequal and have inequality at their core. The problem for Rousseau is that very early in human history, certain institutions were founded that were detrimental to human nature. In particular, private property, the putting up a fence around one's own possessions and saying, that's yours, this is mine, or saying, this is mine and stay away. This opens the door onto society and ultimately to a social contract. But for Rousseau, that itself is the origin of inequality. The institution of private property represents the fundamental break with natural social orders. And for Rousseau, in modernity, states have gotten so bad that they desperately need to be reformed. Rousseau's open to ideas of political revolution. Rousseau does think that there are better and worse political orders, and in particular, he's in favor of a sort of rational republicanism that reflects the broad interests and will of human beings. In a later book called The Social Contract, Rousseau sketches out a more detailed vision of a political system and what it would look like in terms of contracts, institutions, written documents. In this text, he's interested primarily with a diagnosis or a critique of modern political states. Hobbes' view of politics was underlined by a vision of human nature whereby humans are fundamentally violent towards one another. Rousseau's vision of human nature, that is the state of nature prior to the entrance into society via the institution of private property and the formation of social contracts. For Rousseau, that earlier state of nature was actually a peaceful, good one, and humans naturally respect one another and have enough, especially if they have enough space, have a certain natural justice, freedom, and equality with one another. And so Rousseau thinks that we ought to get back to that natural political past.